Hi, we're back again with our contemporary issues in theology. Today we want to start a short series on evangelical shallowness. We've been studying about different theological structures, and one of them has been evangelicalism. One of the drawbacks of evangelicalism is that it has a propensity toward being very shallow theologically, very shallow spiritually, and very shallow in worship. Evangelicalism tends to be cut off from the Christian past. It tends to be cut off from what the church has said. And with its proliferation of non-denominational churches, there is no denominational or authority structure that can really set it back on course. We live in a world where trendiness is next to godliness almost. And so every trend that comes down the line, it seems as though somebody from the evangelical world jumps on board. Some trends are good and some are not. In the recent past, we had things like evangelism explosion, which seemed to work out pretty well and wasn't all that shallow. But in the 80s and 90s, it's gone 20, 30 years in the past, we wound up with things like the seeker-sensitive movement, which had as its root idea that anyone who comes to church should not be offended by anything. So it was the removal from sermons, music, and sight of all things offensive. Well, if you remove everything that offends from the Christian church, then there's not really anything left to preach, because the gospel itself is offensive. Now, we're commanded to not be offensive, but we can't help it that the gospel is offensive. We can't help it that Jesus said, anyone who comes after me must take up his cross and follow me. We can't help it that Jesus said that anyone who would follow me, and I'll interpret it rather than read it literally, anyone who would love father, brother, mother, sister, wife, husband, children, in his own life also, far less than me, cannot be my disciple. So we have built into the evangelical world the possibility of shallowness, because evangelicalism can quickly lose touch with the historical moorings of the Christian church and can kind of launch out into the ocean on its own. Things like seeker-sensitive can quickly degenerate into a feel-good, positive message where you have nothing from the historical version of suffering and pain and loss for being a Christian. I mean, you think of some of the largest churches in America today, many of them are of the seeker-sensitive variety, at least many of the famous ones. Lakewood Church in Houston or Saddleback Church in California. Many of these churches are extremely popular, first and foremost because there's nothing to be offended about. There's nothing to be upset about. There's nothing that might offend the sinner. The problem is that the message of the cross is offensive. Here a man dies who doesn't deserve to die, and the reason that he dies is because we deserve it. And so you can't get around that offense. And part of what we want to talk about in this short series of videos are some examples of contemporary theological issues which lead to evangelical shallowness. Since I'm already talking about it in this video, I'll go ahead and discuss seeker-sensitive. But in the upcoming videos, I want to talk a little bit more about the word faith movement, which really enters into our Pentecostal and charismatic brethren more so than the straight evangelicals. But nonetheless, it is a very sneaky and pernicious error that we do want to expose in these videos. So seeker-sensitive, just to get back on track, basically removes all offense so that people are sensitive to the needs of the seeker. Now, the seeker here is the person who does not go to church and is probably not saved, although you can't know those things for sure. Several years ago, Bill Hybels in suburban Chicago came up with Unchurched Harry and Mary. And then Rick Warren in California came up with Saddleback Sam, which are these typical unchurched people. And so the point of the seeker sensitive movement was to create an environment that would attract these folks, and that there would be enough Christians around them that they would want to assimilate into Christian faith. And they may have assimilated into the churches, but whether or not they've really and truly assimilated into a deep faith remains to be seen, even though there are several sorts of discipleship classes and contemporary trendy things going on at these churches. The heart decision is the one that's the most important. But since seeker sensitive is not really a theological stance per se, but more of a methodological stance, that's really all we want to say about it. What we'll do is we'll come back in the next video and begin talking about the Word Faith movement. And I have to do full disclosure here. I grew up in the Word Faith movement. I grew up with people like Kenneth Hagin and Kenneth Copeland and Charles Capps and Fred Price and John Osteen and all those. And so I have a little bit of experience in it on my own. But when we come back, we'll talk about that a little bit more and try to make some sense of that for you. So hang tight, and we will dive into it right away. Thanks. Bye.